Hello and welcome to my fourth video in the Photoshop series, in which I'm going to discuss layers. I've selected an image. It doesn't really matter what the image is, to be honest. This is a shot down looking over Newby Bridge from one of the small fells by the side of Windermere that I took earlier this year. It was a lovely morning, but I did actually go down and get some better shots in the mist, which is where I prefer to be honest. Let's get this opened anyway. Right click, open with Photoshop 2020. And I'm not going to go really through much how I'd edit this image or anything like that, because that's not what this video is about. But I can't resist at least doing a little bit. That'll do. Just the very basics. There we go, open image. So, as I say, what we're going to discuss is layers. This is a layer, and when you open an image up, it automatically creates one layer, which is called the background. Now, you need to duplicate that layer and have multiple layers. And the way you do that is you either right click, duplicate layer, and it just gives it assigns it the name background copy, or you can drag that layer down to this box with a cross on it. Boom, and you get 3 layers, background copy 2. If I wanted to rename that layer, I can double click on the actual text, and it sends it blue, and I can call this say top layer or whatever you want, or you can call it the sharpened layer or blue color layer, whatever, however it fits. So we've got 3 layers, they're all exactly the same. There's a small icon here which is the visibility. If you turn the visibility off, this top layer is still selected, but I'm viewing the layer below. And likewise, I'm now viewing the layer at the very bottom, the background layer. If I turn that off, there's no layer visible. So what I can do now is I can adjust this layer. So what I'll do is I'll go filter camera raw, and I'm going to turn it to black and white, which is my preferred. Everything I do in camera raw pretty much. So this is also where I do my conversions. You can turn to black and white, and then I will just have a little play with the color channels because I can't resist. I like a little more punch in my black and whites as opposed to my colours generally, which I prefer more flattened. Especially the darks, I like them flattened in colour, but in monochrome you can take them a bit darker. Right, so that's the black and white image. So the way that layers works is we can now view the black and white layer over the colour layer, and we can see all of it. So if I turn it off, we can now see the colour layer as I explained before. The main thing with what some people do, and this is what I used to do, is to delete areas of this. You can use the eraser tool. So you get an eraser, I delete that section, and I go, oh yeah, that's a nice effect. The problem then is, as you can see on the picture, the small icon on the right, I've actually deleted those pixels off this layer, and there's no way to get those back without going back in time and deleting what I've done. So instead we use something called a layer mask. This icon down here, which is a square, a white rectangle with a black circle in the center, we click that once, left click, and it adds what's called a white mask. This means that there's now a white mask over the black and white image, and the white mask makes all of this layer visible. So what's the point, you say? Well, the point of a white mask is I can take a black brush, so I click down here in the bottom left corner to black, I select a brush, and I can now move over the image with my black brush and paint this colour in. Excellent. And now why this is better than the eraser is because if I said, oh, these trees in the centre, I wanted to keep those black and white, I don't have to go back in time and redo it. I can just go down in the bottom left hand corner, switch my brush to white, and now I'm reapplying the white mask over the top. There we go. And if I say, oh no, I want the underneath bit orange, I go back to black. That's it. Now what we can also do is we can go to the top and change the opacity. So rather than just having pure black and white, I can go 50%. And now this will just add 50%. See it? Actually 50% is less colour than you think sometimes, especially in the darker areas. And that's it. So it's quite simple. That's using black on a white mask. We can also use white on a black mask. So I'll right click on that layer, delete layer mask, and we'll go back to the black and white. And what I can do now is I can hold down Alt on my keyboard. This is when you're using a PC. So you hold down Alt and I click the layer, the mask, layer mask down here, the icon, and it brings a black mask now. So what we're now seeing is the top layer is still there, the black and white layer, and it's still selected, but we've got a black mask over the top, which means it's completely obscuring the whole of this layer, and we're effectively seeing the layer below. If I now go to the bottom left hand corner and change my brush to white, I'll go back to 100%. We're just doing the inverse of what we were doing before. So if I now paint it, we're now bringing the black and white image, which is the layer that's selected, we're allowing that to shine through wherever there's white. So it's just the opposite. You can do either. Sometimes I use a black mask, sometimes use a white, and you can also go Alt-I. No, you can't. Is it Control-I? Oh yeah, it's Control-I. And it inverses the mask. So where that was black with white on it, it's now white with black on it. So it just completely flips it through. It inverses it. And that's it. Now, you may be saying, yeah, but this isn't an effect I like. I don't really like selective colour. And fair play to you if you don't, I don't. But that's just as an example. What we could do is, I'll just delete that black and white layer. A use I would use more is for changing tones within an image. So I'll just duplicate the layer, and you've got to get used to playing with these masks and playing with multiple layers, and after a while it just suddenly clicks and it becomes second nature, and it's really not difficult at all. But I remember when I was learning and I was thinking, hey, I'm struggling to make sense of it, but really it's not complicated. You've just got to get stuck in. So I'll open this top layer up in Camera Raw, and I've decided that I want more orange in the center. I want it to be more orangey, so I want to increase the vibrance. See, as I'm doing there, and I want to move the temperature across to make it even more orange, a bit more contrast. I mean, I'm going over the top as an example there. So I've created a really strong image, strong colour in this top layer, and not a strong image, I prefer that. But what we can do now is I can say, right, what I've just done, I want to apply some elements of this stronger colour to the layer below. So I would go for a black mask, so I would click Alt and Mask. So this strong colour is still there, but it's all obscured with a black mask. I now take my white brush, about this size, and I'm changing the opacity down from 100% to 25%. So each stroke I do, I'm only getting 25% of the layer below, of this top layer becoming visible. So as I work that down there, do you see? And I'm using it like a paintbrush. I'm just sort of painting it in, and each push is another 25%. There. And I could say, oh yeah, I like that, but it's gone a bit too funky down here. So I go back to my black brush in the bottom left-hand corner, and I can just then delete some of that really, really strong colour, which is a bit too much for me there. And I'll just delete the areas where it's gone a bit too strong. Now I'll flip it on and off there, and it's added that extra warmth to the centre. And this is basically layers. That you can use adjustment layers down here. I'll just merge that down. Well, I'll tell you one last thing. If I merge this layer down, I go layer, merge down, and that's now become one layer. If I didn't want to do that, I can do Control Alt E. So on a PC, hold down Control Alt and press E. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, and Shift, Control Alt Shift E. It's one of those things, I just get used to doing it myself without thinking about what I'm doing. So it's Shift, Control, Alt and E. There. And what it does is it creates a layer that looks like the accumulation of all the visible layers below. So it does the same thing as me merging this background copy 2 layer down, but without having to merge it down, because I could say, right, well, I want rid of that layer, I'll delete that, and now I've still got the subtle layer, but I've also now got this punchy layer. So that's a bit more advanced, but something you might want to play with. Now I can do adjustment layers, and somebody messaged me on one of my YouTube videos saying you should use adjustment layers. You can do it all in Photoshop. You don't need to go to Camera Raw. And I understand that. I've used adjustment layers in the past, but I've just found a way that I like, and I like to use Camera Raw. Like, you can click this adjustment layer here and go, for example, to brightness and contrast. And I can up the brightness, take the contrast down. And this box here is the effect that I've just done, and it comes with a white mask automatically, which means you can see all of what I've just done, so that if I wanted to delete some of it and say add a vignette to this effect, I would just take a black brush and I can then darken down the corners. And this is how I add vignettes to images there. So you can see at the top where I've darkened it down, and then I can go with my white if I just want to pull some sensor. So that's added a vignette there, but I would do that in Camera Raw rather than Photoshop. And that's basically it. It's I'm going to keep this fairly short. The secret is following through this video, opening one of your own images and trying these same techniques until it clicks. Once it clicks, it'll just be straightforward, and you'll wonder how you ever didn't understand it, and you'll use it in all your editing, because it just becomes much more there's a lot more flexibility, and you can become a lot more creative by using layers. So that's me done. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.